Ethan Miller was a 29-year-old corporate employee living in Chicago, working long hours in a marketing firm. Like many ambitious Americans, he was obsessed with goals, seeing them as the very definition of progress. Every January, he would sit at his desk with a brand new notebook and write down his resolutions: getting a promotion, running a marathon, saving $20,000, learning Spanish, and even writing a novel. On paper, the future looked promising, but deep down, Ethan knew he had been writing similar lists for years, and each time they slowly dissolved into failure and disappointment. The first few weeks after setting his goals always felt thrilling. He joined a gym near his apartment, started listening to Spanish podcasts during his commute, and proudly watched his savings account grow with the first few transfers. But the excitement quickly faded. Work deadlines piled up, late nights left him exhausted, and soon the gym visits became irregular. Spanish lessons were replaced by Netflix binges, and the notebook that once held his plans now gathered dust on the shelf. Each unfulfilled goal weighed on him like a quiet reminder of weakness. Ethan found himself caught in a cycle he couldn't break. At the beginning of every year, his optimism soared with promises to become a better version of himself, yet by spring, the motivation collapsed, leaving behind guilt and self-criticism. He thought there was something wrong with him, that maybe he lacked discipline compared to others who seemed to reach their dreams. On social media, his friends celebrated milestones: new jobs, marathons completed, languages mastered, while Ethan's own ambitions lay scattered like unfinished puzzles. The contrast stung deeply, and the pressure to do better only grew heavier. One cold evening in February, after another failed attempt to drag himself to the gym, Ethan sat in his apartment, scrolling aimlessly on his phone. He stumbled upon a quote from Marcus Aurelius, a Roman Stoic philosopher: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The words made him stop. He read them again slowly, trying to absorb their meaning. It struck him that he had been chasing things outside his control: promotion, recognition, outcomes, while neglecting the one thing he did control: his daily actions and choices. That night, Ethan began to reflect on his past failures. He realized that each of his goals had been focused on an outcome, a distant destination that looked impressive but was out of reach without a clear road. Wanting to save $20,000 meant nothing without a method to save consistently. Declaring he would run a marathon didn't build endurance. Dreaming of writing a book didn't fill blank pages. His goals were like signposts without roads leading to them, and no wonder he often felt lost before even making progress. The revelation made him restless but hopeful. He decided to test a new idea. Instead of obsessing over outcomes, he would create systems. Inspired by the Stoics' wisdom, he realized life was not about chasing illusions, but about steady actions. For savings, he set up an automatic transfer that moved 15% of his paycheck into a separate account every month. He didn't need to think about the goal; the system took care of itself. For health, he promised himself to jog 3 times a week, regardless of distance or speed. For writing, he set a simple target: 500 words every morning before work. At first, the change felt uncomfortable. He was used to thinking in terms of dramatic achievements, not small habits. When jogging, he felt foolish running short distances, knowing it was far from a marathon. When writing, 500 words seemed insignificant compared to the idea of finishing an entire book. But over time, something began to shift. The small actions, repeated consistently, created momentum. He no longer judged his days by how close he was to his goals, but by whether he had followed his systems. Strangely, the pressure lifted, replaced by quiet satisfaction. Weeks turned into months, and the results slowly revealed themselves. His savings account grew steadily, no longer depending on bursts of willpower. His body adapted to regular jogging, and he found himself running farther with ease, almost without noticing. His morning writing sessions filled pages, and for the first time he saw a real draft taking shape. It wasn't dramatic progress, but it was real, and it was sustainable. Ethan realized that the Stoics were right. He couldn't control outcomes, but he could control the process, and the process was everything. Ethan's colleagues began to notice subtle changes in him. He seemed calmer, less frantic about deadlines, and more focused in meetings. He no longer boasted about resolutions or big plans, but spoke with confidence about his routines. When asked how he was suddenly managing his health, writing, and finances, he simply said, "I stopped chasing goals. I built systems." His friends were intrigued, but many dismissed it as too simple. Ethan smiled quietly, knowing simplicity was precisely the point. Systems removed the noise, the illusions, and the anxiety that came with chasing distant dreams. Still, Ethan was not immune to setbacks. There were days he skipped his run, mornings when he overslept, and evenings when unexpected expenses forced him to adjust his savings. But unlike before, these setbacks didn't crush him. He no longer viewed them as failures of his goals, but as small breaks in his system, which he could always return to. It was liberating to know that missing one day didn't erase his progress. The system was forgiving, flexible, and more aligned with real life, where perfection was impossible, but persistence was enough. The more he practiced this new way of living, the more he realized how deeply it resonated with Stoic philosophy. Epictetus had taught that freedom comes not from controlling external events, but from mastering inner discipline. Ethan felt that truth daily. He no longer needed to wait for a future milestone to feel accomplished. He felt it every time he followed his system. Saving money, running, writing, learning. These were no longer abstract dreams, but lived realities, woven into his everyday actions. In this quiet discipline, he discovered a sense of peace he had never known. Ethan also began applying the system mindset to his relationships. Instead of setting vague goals like be a better friend, he created a habit of calling one close friend each week, no matter how busy he was. Instead of saying he wanted to spend more time with family, he established a ritual of Sunday dinners with his parents. These simple systems made his connections stronger and more meaningful. For the first time, he felt he was living intentionally, not chasing an image of who he should be, but consistently practicing the values he wanted to embody. One spring morning, while jogging along Lake Michigan, Ethan paused to reflect on the past few months. He had not run a marathon yet, nor finished his book, nor reached the savings figure he once dreamed about, but he felt more accomplished than ever before. The old Ethan would have felt anxious, worrying about being behind schedule. But the new Ethan understood that systems were not about racing to a finish line, but about living in alignment with discipline and purpose. The paradox was clear. By letting go of goals, he was finally making real progress.